Support for this program is provided by
I'm Will Glover. Thanks for joining me for this month's Future of Work Town Hall. As usual, you can join the conversation by adding your thoughts and questions to the comments, and we'll try to work you in. In the US, roughly 73 million millennials were born between 1980 and 1996 and came of age as the events of 9/11 sparked the longest war in US history, a financial collapse that led to the 2008 economic recession as they entered the workforce. And all this while accruing a staggering amount of student loan debt that, according to educationdata.org, resulted in about 490,000 Michigan millennials owing about $17 billion. Across the country, cities and states are doing everything they can to attract millennials that have the talent and the future buying power to maintain a strong economy. With the eldest in their early 40s, many millennials have let go of the expectation of having a 20-year career with a single employer, which means they're willing to move to the place that offers the best and brightest future. The question, is that place Michigan? Well, to help us get closer to an answer, I'm joined by an authentic Michigan millennial currently at Ford Motor Company as a product marketing manager, who's not only a prime example of who we as a state need more of, he's also an active advocate for getting young professionals to call Detroit and Southeast Michigan home through his ambassador work with Let's Detroit. Marjace Miles, welcome to the Future of Work.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this conversation. I will start by saying that these opinions are expressed solely as Marjace Miles and does not necessarily reflect the views of all millennials. But
yes,
I
absolutely
seriously think this is a fantastic conversation and looking forward to having it.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into it. Like I said in the open, you are a millennial, as am I. So as a young professional, you're here in Southeast Michigan offering your talents to the region, you're raising your family here. Just tell us about a little bit of your journey. Were you born and raised here? Have you been here the whole time? Have you left and come back? Just give us a little insight into what your journey has been.
Yeah, so, born and raised here in Metro Detroit, spent most of my life in Oak Park. Went to Ferndale High School for high school, went to Wayne State University for undergrad. I went to the University of Michigan Ross School of Business for my MBA. So Michigan. I did spend about 3 or so months in Philadelphia area for an internship in between my first and second year at grad school. But obviously I came back home. Professionally, I've been in the automotive industry for about 12 years. As you stated earlier, currently at Ford Motor Company as a product marketing manager for F-150 Lightning. And outside of that, I tend to stay pretty busy. I currently serving as the next gen lead at my local church. That's essentially just a youth pastor. Chairman of the Young Professional Advisory Council at the Michigan Science Center. And I'm also an ambassador at Let's Detroit. Been one for about 4 years.
Yeah, so why? Because obviously you can take your talents pretty much anywhere, though everywhere in the country needs young professionals. So what about Southeast Michigan, the Detroit area has kept you here? Because again, you have options.
Yeah. I mean, you mean besides this awesome weather, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we can't keep, nailing the weather for why people are leaving. We have, New York City and Chicago, Minneapolis. Those all have questionable weather environments as well. But for me, yes, what kept me here, to be honest, it's the family and my community, first and foremost. So being born and raised in this area, having that close-knit community already baked in, it played a major role in my decision. But marketing and marketing within the automotive industry was really appealing to me. I mean, that's an industry that is growing and evolving each day. As a marketer in that industry, we're able to really tap into the ultimate consumer good. I mean, there's emotional connections with it. It's the biggest purchase besides a home for 90% of Americans. And so for me, what's best for my career, what's best for my family is chasing after that.
Yeah. So in your experience, because you've been here, you've been in the industry, and you've played multiple roles in the industry as well. Have you seen that there are opportunities for millennials who are at a professional level as you are? Has that been something that you've noticed? Like obviously you're doing well, but there
Yeah.
are other opportunities for people.
Yes, no, I agree 100%. I think that Detroit and the Metro Detroit region does have plenty of opportunities for people. The backbone is automotive. I don't want to shy away from that, but we have up and coming startups. We have tech firms that are moving downtown with Google and LinkedIn and others. And we also have opportunities for our blue collar workers, for people that want to go into trades and things like that. And so I think at Detroit, how we're shaped, and I'll use a sports analogy because I'm a sports fan. For so long, we're expecting that big fish, that Amazon World Headquarters 2.0. Remember when that discussion happened?
Yep.
But that's not how we're set up. Not as a region, not as a city. We're set up like the bad boys. We're set up like the Pistons, where you have one small piece added to another piece, added to another piece. And so what working in the Detroit region as a professional, as a young professional, as a millennial looks like is just that. It's finding smaller opportunities if you're outside of the automotive industry. And there's a lot of great ones coming and more to come in the future, hopefully.
So part of one of the things you do, as we said, also in the open, is your work with Let's Detroit. You said you've been doing that for a couple years. So just tell us, for those who are unaware, what is Let's Detroit and what your role is as an ambassador has been.
Yeah, so Let's Detroit is a part of the Detroit Chamber of Commerce. And really, Let's Detroit is just a connector. Detroit, Metro Detroit, it's small to us locals, but for transplants, people trying to enter this area, it can be pretty big. I mean, it's hard to find your network, the best companies to work for, places to visit, organizations to create an impact on. And what Let's Detroit's goal is to make that easier. They want to connect young professionals like myself to other young professionals, point blank, period. And so what they're finding is we can Google best restaurants to go to. You can LinkedIn best places to work. But when it comes from somebody that's experienced it, myself, it's more impactful. I'll give you examples. So I'm a Black male. I'm married. I live in the suburbs. I work in automotive. That's my experience. It's unique. And I can share that gospel of Detroit with, let's say, 10 people at different bars, at networking events, but that only goes so far. What Let's Detroit is equipped to do is amplify that. So it's not just Marjace sharing that, it's Jenny sharing that, it's Craig sharing that, it's Virginia sharing that. And when we start to have those real conversations on scale, that's when we can really attract people to come back to this area and get people excited about what we're doing here in Detroit.
Right. So as an ambassador, was that your role? Because if I'm understanding this correctly, part of what an ambassador does is field questions, because there's the Ask a Detroiter feature.
Yeah.
But you guys also kind of maybe chaperone, show people some cool places to go. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I would say it's really broken into 3 categories. One is career ambassador. So I'm in all 3 categories. I'll start by saying that. The first one is career ambassador. So I have, call it a LinkedIn profile on the website, talks about my time at Ford, my time before Ford. People reach out to me with questions. I've had a chance to review resumes. I've mock interviewed people. I've made connections for people wanting to enter the industry or not. The second one is text ambassador. So that's a little bit more social in nature. So I want to go to a great restaurant with my wife this evening. I want to grab a beer on Thursday night. What's a good place to go? I'm new to the area. What's a great place to see? And then the last one is events. I mean, whether it be social events or more networking, career-focused events. I've had an opportunity to speak at a number of them. I've had a chance to host a number of them where, sometimes it's handing out cards and trying to get the next job, but other times it's grabbing a beer with someone that looks and thinks and talks like you.
So that I want to highlight this because, and I'll just have you speak to it. What is the
Yeah.
importance of having that level of, I guess, relationship building or or just like someone to show a person the community, as opposed to, like you're saying,
Yeah.
they can Google all of these things. But what kind of difference does it make to actually have a real life person
Yeah.
help you figure these things out when you're essentially considering and looking into what is a major life shift? If you're moving to a whole new region,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
So this might be a millennial answer, but I think connections are important. I
Right.
mean, as we're making these decisions, it's a lot harder to leave an area if you have those emotional and real connections to that area. And the only way to create it is not through a Google search, it's with somebody like myself or other less ambassadors showing you around, telling you about it, explaining why it's so important to us. I'll give one example, not directly associated with Let's Detroit, but at Ford, we have interns. They come in every year, 11 weeks. We interview them essentially for those 11 weeks. And, if you get an offer, you come back and stuff. Over the last few years, they've been remote. And we've only got a chance to bring them here for a week at a time or even a weekend at a time. Last year, when we had our interns come in for only 4 days, first of all, we packed so much into those 4 days. I don't know how they
Right.
survived. We floated the Huron River. We took them to the DIA. We took them to sporting events. We had a barbecue. But
Oh man.
the amount of times that people said, I did not know Detroit had so much to offer. Wow, I did not know that the riverfront was so cool. I didn't know, and this is a quote, I didn't know Michigan had beaches. And we're the Great Lakes state. You should know that. But it's those connections. It was so much different than trying to do it online or through Google. And so it's all about the connections. It really is.
How often do you encounter that type of thing? Because when you say someone was unaware that Michigan has beaches and Michigan has the world's largest freshwater coastline,
Exactly.
it just doesn't. Is that a common thing where people are just lacking what we think is basic information about this place?
100%. And it's because for so long, we haven't controlled our narrative. I mean, there's been obviously stuff in the news. We can go into the social, political climate and things like that if we wanted to. But at the end of the day, the news has controlled what is Detroit, what is Michigan for way too long. And until we get to a place where we're taking that narrative back, that's what's gonna happen. And so I think Let's Detroit does a great job at doing that, one personal connection at a time. So, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're interacting with people, because like you're saying, you're showing them all sorts of stuff, you're obviously illuminating their minds. What what are some of the questions? Because you said you've also helped people do mock interviews, you've helped review resumes. What kinds of questions and support have you seen millennials considering this area look for most commonly? Because this could be some insight into what other leaders in other organizations or programs can have already ready to go for people that might be inquiring.
Yeah, I don't think that millennial checklist is any different than a lot of other generations or anybody's checklist. They want to be paid well. They want to have a solid work-life balance, and they want to feel valued. They want to be able to change what the situation that they're in, the company that they're in, on a real level. And so I'll touch on each one of those at a time. First, having good pay. Millennials have one of the highest student debts of any generation out there, if not the highest student debt. So when we're, seeking a living wage of X amount of money, it's not necessarily because we're selfish, it's because we have bills to pay.
There's debt to service. Yes.
It's debt to service. I think that the second thing is people want to know what work-life balance looks like. In the automotive industry, are we working 50 hours a week? Are we working, 100 hours a week? Are we getting dragged into work on the weekends? And so a lot of the questions around that it's evolving today because of the pandemic. I mean,
Right.
what work-life balance looked like 5, even 10 years ago is completely different than now. We want to be able to work and live where we want to live. And so a lot of questions are going around there. Can I work here and go to this place as well? And then I think the last thing is, and this one might be more millennial focused than other generations, is having that value and bringing those changes to work. As millennials, we wear our opinions very, on our sleeves, where
Absolutely,
with our pockets, books, where we're spending our money, where we're spending our time, where we're working is all dependent on our beliefs, our systems.
Yep.
I think automotive, and I'll expand this to the whole Detroit area, but we're in a really good spot. We're evolving what it looks like to work in automotive, electric vehicles, service marketing, digital content, and that ecosystem. Those are all much more millennial focused activities and entrepreneurial ventures than, just kind of twisting a wrench in ICE vehicles has ever been. So I think we're in a really good spot. Those are some of the questions I've had, some of the conversation I've had, but I think we're in a good spot.
So because we're talking about, what the wants and the needs are and what millennials are looking for, which, as you said, and I would like to reaffirm, these are not new things or new whole cloth, like, oh, we're trying to change the game. No, just basic stuff. The only difference is, I think, a major difference is the almost built-in expected amount of a salary that goes to a student loan.
Yeah,
that was required to get the salary. That's a whole other future of work conversation. Yeah. But in consideration of Southeast Michigan, there are a litany of programs, initiatives, and things like that geared at all sorts of facets of life here. So from your perspective, do you think people's calculus is giving more weight to the availability of these, mid-level or high-end paying jobs that, might provide a stable career, or, with things like the onset of remote work, is the calculus more geared towards, are the schools good? Is there healthcare available? Is housing available? Is it the jobs, or is it the environment? What do you think?
Yeah, Will, you're going to love this answer. It depends. And it honestly does.
Of course.
I mean, we're talking about millennials as if we're, one person, but my experience, your experience, I have 2 older brothers. They're both millennials as well. Their experiences are vastly different. I mean, I now have a daughter. And so what school system I'm in and where she can attend is part of my calculus. But we do have other people that are dual income, no kids, and that doesn't necessarily play into those roles. It is about work. It is about work-life balance. Is being able to travel and still, make ends meet while they're at home. So honestly, it depends. And I think what we are tasked with doing as a region is meeting each of those people where they are. So we can't just say, oh, we have great school districts, done. We check the box. We can't just say, oh, now we have 6-figure jobs that are accessible to a number of our population, check, we're done. We have to do it for everybody. And that's what millennials are asking for and needing as they're entering the workplace, especially in Southeast Michigan.
So before we go into the next thing, because I will want to play a clip, I'm just curious, have you had an experience yet with Let's Detroit and your ambassadorship that has been almost like like the pipelines that we try to build when it comes to talent? Have you worked with someone that reached out, asked some questions, maybe you went to have a beer, and then they decided to make the transition? They're here now as a working individual in Southeast Michigan. Has that happened? Have you had that conversion?
Yeah, so I won't point directly to a conversation I've had with Let's Detroit, but I serve as a recruiter at Ford, and I do diversity recruiting at different conferences across the United States. I do recruiting at the University of Michigan, and the same conversation, the same template that I use at Let's Detroit, I use the same thing there. And so it's about it was really cool. One of our internship class, we had like a battle of the neighborhoods. So everybody that was a full-time employee, they rep their neighborhood, and they're saying, this is why you should live in Royal Oak. This is why you should live in the New Center area. This is why you should live in Dearborn. And so it's been tremendous to try to get those people, and successfully getting a lot of people to work at Ford and join my marketing leadership MLP program. And it's not necessarily connected directly with Let's Detroit, but I'm using those same templates, that same discussion topics that I have, and then continue to go with Let's Detroit. So yeah.
So it works is really what I'm asking. Like because we're talking about talking to people in person, developing that relationship, and trying to see if we're a fit for them. So with that said, like I said, I'd like to play a clip. Back in January, I spoke with the Senior Director of Community Engagement and Leadership Development for the Detroit Regional Chamber, Devin O'Reilly, and this was just before the Detroit Policy Conference. And on the other side of this, I just want to get your response to what is essentially his pitch for millennials coming to Detroit. Starting your business here, growing your business here, starting your family here, growing your family here, living, working, playing. What is your pitch for anybody who might not quite get it yet?
We talked about that small town feel. Well, that's helpful in that regard, because if you want to make something of yourself here, whether it be start your own business, whether it be part of a larger business that you feel is doing something really great, worthwhile, you can do it here easier and more accessible because everyone talks to each other. You can be in Detroit for a week and find all the right people. You find Devin, I introduce you to Will introduces you to Jeanette Pearson, whoever it is, whoever you want to talk to. That's what kind of always my personal pitch to people. When I talk to small businesses, when I talk to entrepreneurs, and I have from all over the world, I tell them in a nutshell, who do you need to talk to? We can connect you. I can connect you, because that's what Detroit does, and we all know each other, and we all have these relationships. So you can do it here. You can build it here. Whatever that is to you, you can build it here.
If you're just joining us, I'm Will Glover here with Let's Detroit Ambassador and Ford Motor Company Project Marketing Manager Marjace Miles. We're talking about attracting the sought-after millennial to the Southeast Michigan region. Feel free to join the conversation by putting your thoughts and comments in the chat. And for all of you watching, let us know what you think of today's conversation by filling out the survey that's also in the chat. So, Marjace, what Devin was just talking about was something that I think is becoming a bit of a theme, but he was saying that one of the strengths of our region when it comes to careers and as well as, the business environment is the relationships that we're able to build and the networking and an overall general sense of we're competitive, but we don't have to be competing against each other. So obviously, you're with Ford Motor Company. You've been an ambassador. Is that the case? Does Southeast Michigan have something special, if you will, about the way we do business, the way we welcome people, the way we work together?
Yeah, I think we do. So there's a quote that I use quite often in these conversations that Detroit, the Metro Detroit area, is big enough to matter in the world, but small enough for you to matter in it. And I think that is this region in a nutshell, because we want to be in a place, at least I do, where when they hear Detroit or when they hear Michigan, emotions are stirred. People know it. It's not a small town. But I also want to be able to have my own footprint in that town. And in Detroit versus everybody and other slogans kind of allows us to lean into what makes this region special. And it's not Detroit as in if you live in the city of Detroit or if you're from Detroit. We want to take on people. We want people to be able to join this area and still feel part of that community. And I think that's exactly what the clip was saying, that Detroit and Metro Detroit has that unique aspect to say, you're one of us now, come and join us. And hopefully we can continue to lean into that in the future. Right.
So this kind of leads into you being the perfect person to talk to this about, because you're a marketing professional and you have this depth of experience. When I have spoken with either, heads of colleges per se, or other companies, small businesses, professors, everyone who is trying to put their efforts towards winning this. I don't want to call it a national battle, but trying to win as many young and talented people as possible. One of the issues that everyone comes across, regardless of the industry or what the program or policy might be, is getting people to know about it, to hear it, to understand what the message is. So, in your experience, what you've seen, and we were talking a little bit about this beforehand, what does Michigan need to be doing to get the message out about what we have to offer, about the climate that we have, climate being like the business climate and the people? But from a marketing standpoint, where are we missing the target, and what should we be doing?
So if I knew the answer to that question, I think I'd be making a lot more money than I do now. But if we start to unpack that, I think that what I've been saying, what this conversation is about making those connections and make it those connections on scale. And so the best way we can do that is to lean into the great opportunities that we have and allowing those that are in this area that have experienced it to be the people broadcasting that message. It has to be authentic. It has to be real, and it has to be steady. And when I'm saying steady, just like marketing, we don't play a commercial once. We play it 10 times. We play it 15 times over the course of 5 years. 5 days or something like that. And so what we need to do is have that, find what people are looking for, millennials specifically, have that authentic conversation there, and just keep repeating it and keep sharing it over and over again. They might not hear it the first time, they might not hear it the second time, but afterwards, like, yeah, I did realize that Detroit has one of the best sports environments in the country with 4 major teams within a mile. I didn't know that. Now I know. That's what it is.
Right. So one of the things that also comes up is the understanding, and still talking about this marketing and getting the message out space, is the fact that we're not just competing with Ohio or Pennsylvania or Illinois or our direct competition. We're also competing with breaking through the noise of a social media feed, through, getting to reach someone who has spent the entire day working and just doesn't have the bandwidth to receive a message. We're up against so much other noise. Is there, I guess, something that maybe leadership or municipalities or whoever is listening and in a position to do so, is there something that they should be putting more of their focus into? Is it trying to develop a better social media presence, like you said, to have that repetition in front of people? Is it maybe more events, sending people out to other places? What I'm just trying to figure out and help people understand what the options are to get this message out.
No, completely understand. I think that a lot of the techniques that people are using are the right techniques. It's hard. One thing I will say that I don't know if we necessarily touched on is we can start younger. All of our conversations have been around attracting the millennials back and, getting the 30-year-old and middle management to move here to Detroit. That works. That's good. And I think that's what we're trying, but why not start at younger ages? Promoting automotive, promoting the Midwest and our beautiful, shorelines at high schools, at middle schools, at case competitions. Invite the brightest and best high schoolers out here to pitch why this vehicle should be promoted over this vehicle. This touch each person where they're at a younger age. Maybe that could work.
I will say there's definitely something, and obviously, for those watching, we will have a future of work about Generation Z coming in the future. Just gotta plug that real quick.
Of course.
But I think, just like in our last town hall when we were talking about Gen X, one of the things that we were talking about is the approach to the workplace in general, and how Gen X taking the lead as baby boomers exit is going to change the workplace. But you just said it yourself. Millennials are moving into middle management positions, having more responsibility and decision-making capability. How do you think the workforce is going to change as us as millennials gain more ability to make decisions and kind of pave the road for those coming behind us, for those Gen Zers, for the younger kids? Do you think that the millennial approach or outlook is going to have an impact?
Oh, I think it's going to have a huge impact. I mean, do you remember when millennials used to be a cuss word? Like you didn't want to say millennial. I was feeling offended when, when they said you're a millennial.
Right. I mean, followed by the avocado toast. Yeah,
exactly. We got killed for avocado toast, for wanting frozen yogurt at our work. But
yes, killing department stores, all of it. Yeah.
Fast forward, we were right. In a lot of these approaches, we were right. Having a work-life balance, leaning into, being able to own your career rather than the company owning your career, working 50 years and, and then leaving. Those were correct. And as we're moving into middle management, as we're moving into more leadership roles, my hope is that we can bring those high expectations, which I think are just expectations.
Right.
We can take it with us and we can change the ways that our businesses run, making it a more holistic approach than maybe generations before us were able to do.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, as you said, we are all individuals still. It's, we have to remind ourselves that generations aren't monolithic. So we don't want to throw too much shade on our predecessors.
100%.
So Marjace, my last question for you is a question I like to ask everyone, whether it's here during the live stream or if I'm doing a business profile or talking to an expert, is what do you think, or what do you hope rather, the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like when it comes to the future of work in Michigan, when it comes to what it's like to work here, what it's like to live and play here, what it's like to raise your family here? What are your hopes?
Yeah, so I work in Corktown right now at the factory, TFACT, and every time I look out my window, I see the train station. As you know, if you're from Detroit, that recently Ford purchased the train station, revitalizing it, calling it Michigan Central, where it'll be an opportunity for people to work, to play, to have drinks after the clock is over. And I would love to see that template be used throughout this region, and not just from its logistics of building a building and the appropriate infrastructure around it, but the idea of we need to move forward from the old way of doing things, that we need to recreate what it looks like to work and play and live in a certain area. And so the book depository just opened up. That's fantastic. That's step 1 in the Michigan Central steps. But we have more to do, and there will be more done. And as a industry, Ford, but also as a region, we need to step in ideas like this.
Yeah.
And that's how we're going to attract talent 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and beyond.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, this draws to an end. We had some comments. We didn't get a chance to get to them, but thank you guys for watching, and we will try to respond to those when we can. Thank you for joining us for this month's Future of Work Town Hall. I'd like to thank Marjace Miles for taking the time with us today. Very much appreciated. Let us know what you thought about the conversation today, and do it by taking the short survey that's in the comments. You can watch more town halls and catch all of our Future of Work coverage at onedetroitpbs.org, and you can follow me on social media at Will of Michigan. That's all for now. I'll see you in the future.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program is provided by